Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be another battle of the palettes. So you guys have been requesting these so much and I'm so happy that you're finding them helpful. So first of all, if you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. And second of all, this is where I basically take 3 or 4 different palettes that look super similar and compare them. I do comparison swatches, I talk about the formulas in relation to each other, the pros and cons, and then at the end I talk about which one I like the best. And the reason that I started doing this is just because there are so many palettes coming out. It almost seems like there's one coming out every day, especially if you follow the makeup accounts over on Instagram. It is just crazy. And there's so much hype around all these palettes that are coming out. I thought, you know, this might be a really helpful idea just because a lot of times you feel like I need this palette, it's new, I want it, but you don't realize that you might have something very similar in your collection already and you might not really need it. So I hope that you guys find these videos helpful. If you do, definitely give them a thumbs up. And also please don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you'll be notified of future videos. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. So today's palette showdown, as I like to call it, it has sort of a beachy theme going on. So these are all warm tone palettes, but I already did a warm tone palette showdown a few weeks back. So I decided to title this one Beachy themed, partly because I was inspired to do this when I got the new Urban Decay Beached palette, and because 3 out of the 4 palettes actually have a beach theme to them. So there's the Urban Decay Beached palette versus the Tarte Be a Mermaid and Make Waves palette. Then we have the Lamar Cosmetics Reina palette. This is actually brand new. It just came out recently. And then the Colourpop Dream Street palette, which doesn't have a beachy theme, but the colors inside are super similar to the other ones. So I've definitely wanted to include this. So I'm going to talk about each palette individually, show you some swatches, and then at the end I'll just put everything together and let you know my favorite. So first let's start with the Urban Decay Beached palette. This one is $34 for 8 shades and it's absolutely beautiful. I have to say I really enjoy the formula of this one. The Backtalk palette that they came out with before this, I was kind of disappointed in. A lot of the shades were a little bit patchy and dry and hard to work with. This one is absolutely gorgeous. It's like the original Naked palettes used to be. It's stunning. All of the shades are so creamy and so buttery, and I absolutely love the formula and it's super easy to work with. The only downside to this palette is that it only has one matte shade and it's sort of a deeper burnt orange color that is too dark for me to use in my crease because I'm so fair, and I usually like to use a matte shade as a transition. So this doesn't have that for me. It also doesn't have a matte Ivory shade, which I also like to put all over my lid as a base and up to my brow bone. It does have this shade Salt, which is an ivory satin color, so it doesn't have a lot of heavy shimmer and it is a really beautiful brow bone highlight, but I don't use this all over my lid like I would with an ivory matte shade. So it is sort of missing a few shades for me, but I think this is just sort of meant to be more of a fun, shimmery summer type palette. It's not necessarily supposed to be something that you're going to use all the time or all year round, but those are just some things to keep in mind when choosing the beach palette. So next up is the Tarte Be a Mermaid and Make Waves palette. This one is the most beautiful in terms of packaging. It looks like a seashell. It's absolutely gorgeous. Inside you have a really large mirror, you have 14 really beautiful shades, but again, my one complaint with this is that even though it has 3 matte shades, which is 2 more than the Urban Decay one does, out of the 3 there's only really one that's light enough for me to use as a transition shade. The other 2 are really dark, and then on top of that there's no ivory or light sort of all over shade that I can put all over the lid. The one light shade, Nude Beach, which is a really shimmery champagne color, I use as an inner corner highlight. I actually am wearing this palette today, but as far as a brow bone highlight or an all over lid color, I do have to dip into another palette just to get that matte ivory shade. So that's my one complaint about this palette, but I do really enjoy the Tarte Amazonian Clay formula. I know some people don't like it. I absolutely love this formula, so this palette for me is one of my favorites lately, and I really like that it has some additional warm tone shades that the Urban Decay doesn't have. You get a little bit more color selection in here, but I can't really complain too much because like the Urban Decay palette, I think that this one is really just supposed to be more of a fun, shimmery summertime palette. It's not supposed to be like the Tartelette in Bloom where you have all these super useful shades for every day. I think they really intended you to just use this for more fun, bolder, summery type looks. So in that case, I don't really mind so much that it doesn't have like all of the useful shades that I would need on an everyday basis. And then next up we have the brand new palette from Lamar Cosmetics. This is a new brand that just launched by a makeup artist. She's Gabby T MUA on Instagram, and she's done Kathleen Light's makeup for a lot of her photo shoots and things like that. I was super excited to get this palette ahead of time and swatch it for their website. So this one is $28 for 8 shades, so you're getting the same amount of shades as the Urban Decay palette, but it's $6 less. And I have to say, for a new brand, I was a little like wary about what the formula was going to be like. It is amazing. When I first touched this palette, I couldn't believe how buttery these eyeshadows were. They remind me a lot actually of Juvia's Place. If you've tried Juvia's Place, they're just super strong, super pigmented, and just absolutely creamy and beautiful and blend so nicely. This one actually has 4 shimmer shades and 4 mattes, so you get a really good variety in here, which I like a little better than the Urban Decay palette. But even though the formula is amazing, I think on the downside for me, this palette doesn't have enough mid-tone shades. It has pretty much all deep shades with the exception of the top 2 shimmer colors that are a little bit lighter. But again, there's no matte ivory shade or blending shades. There's no transition shade that's light enough for me to use in my crease. Everything is really dark and colors that I would probably use either just on my lid for the shimmers or like in the outer corner or maybe to line my eyes with. I think if you have a deeper skin tone, this would be amazing for you. But for me, it just, I think, runs a little bit too deep overall just for my skin tone. I find myself just wearing one of the shimmer shades as a pop on my lid. But as far as the matte shades go, I do need to dip into another palette to get some of the mattes that I need to complete a full eye look. And then last but not least is the Colourpop Dream Street palette. This one was a collab with Kathleen Lights, one of my favorite beauty YouTubers of all time. I've been watching her forever, so I was definitely going to buy this palette. Plus, I collect Colourpop's palettes because the formula is so good and they're so affordable. In this one, you're getting 12 shades for $16. And even though the color scheme is very similar to the others, I do find that this one is a little bit more muted. It does have your blue shades and some pops of color in here, but they're not as like bright and vibrant as in the other palette. So if you're really looking for those super bright pops of color, this one is just like a little tamer than that, and I actually prefer that because I don't wear really bright colors on an everyday basis. I also love the ratio of mattes to shimmers in here. There are 7 mattes and 5 shimmers, and a lot of the mattes are really usable for me on my skin tone. So you have your matte ivory shade and you have some lighter matte transition shades up here. So for someone with fair skin, this palette out of all 4 is probably the most workable for me. Not to mention that the formula is incredible. It blends beautifully. I have no issues with Colourpop's palettes at all. They're actually one of my favorite eyeshadow formulas ever. And because they're so affordable, it just makes it like that much better. So here's a quick look at all the palettes swatched side by side just so you can get a good idea of how they compare to each other all in one spot. It's kind of amazing how similar they all really are. Alright, so as for my favorite, this was kind of tough because going on formula alone, I don't have a problem with any of these palettes. As far as formula goes, I think they are all beautiful and they all perform really, really well. So that's kind of rare because usually I have issues with certain aspects of certain palettes, but in this case, all of these palettes I think are worth picking up if you're going by just the formula. But if I had to pick a favorite, I would pick the Dream Street palette from Colourpop. Not only is it the most affordable and the formula can definitely stack up to the other 3, I think it's just the most usable palette for me on an everyday basis. But that being said, if you're not looking for usable palettes and you just want a really fun, bold, bright summer palette, then any one of the other 3 would definitely be a good choice. It just depends on how many shades you're looking for and the sort of combination of shades that you're looking for. But I honestly could recommend them all. I think they're all great. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. I would also love to hear in the comments below, which one did you like the best? Which one is your favorite? And do you own any of these? I would love to know your thoughts. I always love chatting with you guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.